In the name of Allah. Hello my dear students, how are you? I hope you are happy and enjoy good time and good health. Today inshallah we will talk about equations of value. We will use the formula for amount, which is S equal B times 1 plus RT, and the formula for the present value, which is B equal S over 1 plus RT. Equations of value is used when we need to replace one or more obligations with one or more payments at different times that will be equivalent in value to the original obligations. Let's show that in the first example. Exercise number 1. A person owes $500 due in 4 months and $1,000 due in 8 months. What single payment 6 months hence will discharge this obligation if the settlement is based on an interest rate of 12% and the focal date is 6 months hence? Let's draw the timeline. $500 after 4 months, $1,000 after 8 months. We will replace them with a single payment after 6 months. It's the same time of focal date. In equations of value, there are 3 cases according to the position of focal date. The first case, focal date is in after maturity dates of old and new obligation. So, the amount of old obligation equal the amount of new obligation. The second case, when the focal date lies before the maturity dates of old and new obligation. So, the present value of old obligations equal the present value of new obligations. The third case, when the focal date lies in between the maturity dates of old and new obligations. In this case, the amount of sum of old obligations plus the present value of the others equal the amount of sum of new obligations plus the present value of the others. In our example, the focal date lies in between the maturity dates of old and new obligations. There are old obligations lies before and after the focal dates. So, for $500, we will use the formula of amount, which is B equal 500 with rate of 12% and T for 2 over 12. We will not use the time, which is in example 4 months. We will substitute for T with 2 months. We calculate T by the distance from the maturity dates to focal date. Again, we calculate T by measuring the distance between the maturity date and the focal date. So T for $500 equal 2 months, and T for $1,000 equal 2 months, and for X T equal 0. So for X we will not calculate S or P. We will take X as it. We will take X as its value. The main formula: value of old obligations equal value of new obligations. By substituting for 500 in formula S equal B times 1 plus LRT, so X equal 500 times 1 plus 12% times 2 over 12 plus for $1,000 we will use formula for present value B equal S over 1 plus RT. 1,000 over 1 plus 12% times 2 over 12. So X will be equal 1,490. Exercise 2. A person owes $600 due in 3 months and $900 due in 6 months. If money is worth 16%, a single payment in 6 months will settle both obligations. What's the focal date at 6 months? A very effective way to solve many problems in mathematics of finance is to make a time diagram. If you draw a good time diagram, the equations of value will practically write itself. In simple interest problem, the answer will vary slightly depending on the location of focal date. In our example, focal date lies after the maturity dates of old and new obligations. According to this, the amount of old obligations must be equal the amount of new obligations at focal date. In our example, for $600 we will get the amount, and for $900 we will take its value, which is equal $900, because we will not get the amount or present value for $900. By adding the amount of $600 to $900, it will be equal to X. The main formula: value of old obligations equal value of new obligations. Note that the time for $600, it's a distance between the maturity date of $600 and the focal date. So T equal 1, 2, 3 over 12. So X equal $600 times 1 plus 60% times 3 over 12 plus $900. So the value of all the obligation equal 1,524, which is equal the value of new obligations. The next example. A person owes $500 due in 6 months and $750 due in 1 year. What cash payment will retire both debts if money is worth 15%? Used now as the focal date. The time diagram. The focal date lies before the maturity dates of old and new obligation against the time. For $100 we will use formula B equal S over 1 plus RT, and the same for 750. So the main formula, value of all the obligations equal value of new obligations. For 400 the time was 6 months, and for 750 the time was 1 year. In the time diagram, 400 after 6 months from the beginning, and for 750 it's 12 months from the beginning, or 1 year from now or beginning. So x equal 400 over 1 plus 15% times 6 over 12 plus 750 over 1 plus 15% by 1. So x equal 1024.267. The next example. Debts of $1,000 and $3,000 are due in 3 and 6 months respectively. What cash settlement will settle these debts if it based on an interest rate of 10%, and the time of the cash settlement is used for the focal date? Let's draw the time diagram. $1,000 after 3 months, $1,000 after 3, $3,000 after 6, $1,000 after 3 months, $3,000 after 6 months. And for the focal date and the time of cash settlement is used for the focal date, so we will use now for the focal date. In this case, we will bring $1,000 at the time of focal date, so we will use the formula of present value, and the same for $3,000. So in the second case, which is the focal date, lies before the maturity dates of old and the new obligation, so the present value of old obligation equals the present value of new obligations. With a rate of 10%, and formula value of old obligation equal value of new obligations, x equal 10%, $1,000 over 1 plus 10% times 3 over 12 plus 3,000 over 1 plus 10% times 6 over 12. So x will be equal 3,832.751. Note that in general, if I say that old obligation equal new obligations True or false? It's false. It must be value of all obligations equal value of new obligations. Or can I say all the obligations equal to new obligations at focal date? Why? Because when I get all the obligations at focal date, I get the value of all the obligations. And the same for the new obligations. When I get new obligations at focal date, I get the value of new obligations. In our example, all the obligations will be equal 3,832, which is equal to new obligations at focal date. Exercise number 5. A debitor signs a note for $2,000 due in 1 year with interest at 12%. 3 months after the debt is contracted, the holder of the note sells it to the third party, who determines its value at 16%. Simple interest. How much does the seller of the note receive? We know that for the note there are 3 dates. The first date is called date of note. He is the date when the debitor signs a note, called again date of note. The second date is the maturity date for the note. The third date is called discount date. In time diagram, date of note is now. Maturity date after 12 months. Discount date after 3 months. Again, a debitor signs a note for $2,000 due in 1 year. So now is date of note. After 1 year, it's a maturity date of maturity value of the note. The question here, what is the maturity value of the note? Is it $2,000 or more than or less than? Note that he says a debitor signs a note for $2,000 with interest 12%. So I must get the amount for $2,000. So the maturity value for the note here is the amount for $2,000 after 1 year with 12%. In time diagram, I'll get the amount by using formula S equal B times 1 plus RT with a rate of 12%. After getting the amount, I need to get the payment that the buyer will receive. How much does the seller of the note receive? It's after 3 months. At the beginning, we will get the value of the note after 1 year by getting the amount for $2,000 by using formula is equal B times 1 plus RT. After 1 year, with 12%, X will be equal 2,240. So the value of the note, the maturity value of the note equal 2,240. By using formula, value of old obligations equal value of new obligations, V equal S over 1 plus RT. So X equal 2,240 over 1 plus 16%, 1 plus 16% times 9 over 12. Note that the T9 for the present value, it's a time from the maturity value date, the maturity date for the note to the focal date. So B will be equal $2,000. Exercise 6. A borrower signs a note for $4,500 due in 6 months with interest at 15%. 2 months after the note is signed, the holder of the note sells it to a buyer who charges 18% simple interest for discounting. How much does the seller receive? By drawing the time diagram, the maturity date of the note after 6 months with 12% rate, the face value of the note was $4,500 and the maturity value for the note becomes 4,770 by using the formula for S equal B times 1 plus RT, and the T for the amount, it's from the beginning to the maturity date of the note. Then we will use a rate of 18% to get the present value for the maturity value of the note. For how many months? For 4 months. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's from the maturity date of the note to the focal date. You will start by getting the maturity value of the note after 6 months. From formula is equal B times 1 plus RT. X equal 4,500 times 1 plus 12% times 6 over 12, which is equal 4,770. So the maturity value for the note after 6 months was 12% equal 4,770. In value equations, which is value of old obligations equal value of new obligations, the value of 4,770 of focal date must be equal the value that the buyer will receive. formula B equal S over 1 plus RT, X equal 4770 over 1 plus 18% times 4 over 12. The 4 here from the maturity date of the note to focal date. So B would be equal $4,500. This is the last example for now. Thank you for watching. My advice to you: be safe, protect yourself, protect your family, use face mask. See you next time and good luck.